Mess.
Well, welcome to another edition of Rolling the Bones Around the Cage with Grizzly and Gumshoguy. Val, what's happening, Val?
Hello from Detroit, Michigan.
Northern Kentucky.
Rainy, cool, cloudy, Detroit, Michigan.
Yeah, right. What's going on, more? Hey, Pamela, Denise. We got Crazy Witch sliding in the rear. Do I sound okay? I sound kind of weird on my end.
You sound good. I've had a lot of issues with the computer today. I don't know what the deal is.
Testing Jeremiah Sutton. What's going on there, brother? Everybody saying hello. So how's your weekend going?
Real good. Summertime, got a lot of birthdays, graduations, parties, meetings, this, that, and the other. Hey, before I forget, I want to give a shout out and to the Downriver Detroit veterans group down here. If people get a chance, say hello to a veteran, give them a break, help them out, give them a hand. The Downriver Veterans, Michigan. And there you go.
Amen for that, yeah. So everybody has been contacting me. They're like, did Val lose his, And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, what about our guest?
Okay. We have Janice Cowder going to join us today. Is she in the background there? Is she back?
No, she is not.
All right, hang on. Let me see if I can get her back.
So everybody was like, what is Val and Chris? See, look. Yeah, what's up, Val and Chris? What's happening, Chris? Yeah, I had to play that video, Chris. But BFRO? I mean, was you awake when you did this?
BFRO, the guy from Michigan, apparently he doesn't want to come on, so he hasn't contacted me back.
I wonder why.
I've heard that so many times from people, hey, we made a report, we called them, we contacted them, and they don't show up. They don't call back. They don't get back in touch with us. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here in Michigan, and the offer was there, and apparently there's no interest in that. So we'll leave that as it is, and it is what it is. So
we don't have anybody. So welcome Yolanda, Aussie Sue. Hello there. So what's going on, everybody? So yeah. Hello, I'm live. How are you doing?
Is she bumped off?
No, that was my daughter calling me. She's like, "You're live." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm live." She's like, "Oh,
yeah." There's something up with the computers today, for
so
sure.
make sure and resend that link that I sent you."
Yes, I am. I'm doing that right now.
All right, all right.
Let's see if we
So
get it.
yeah,
She was with me just a minute ago before
she
I started
was.
getting bumped off.
Stanley Stone says, "You have me. We don't need them. We don't need no stinking badges." Speaking about badges, did you hear what Indiana's up to?
No, what's up?
Yeah, so they are passing a state mandatory pursuit law for the entire state of Indiana. It is not going to be up to the departments anymore or the SOPs that departments make. They are setting the guidelines on what you can and cannot pursue. We'll say that for another show. I just had to mention that.
No, you're
That blew
talking
my
about
socks off.
you're talking about pursuit chases?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. The whole state is going to be one pursuit policy. See, when I was on, we would chase you across state lines.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yes, they are setting up guidelines. Hello there, Catherine. Welcome to the show with Yolanda, Standing Stones. And Thomas, he slid in the corner and around. He's got around the first place there on the rail. Yes, Thomas, welcome. Glad to have you there. So, but I couldn't believe that when I was laying on my chase in the studio. And, because I always keep up with some of the law, because the code cases that I work on.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, do what? And I'm like, that has got to be fake news. So I went to the ILEA and I checked it out. And I'm like, whoa, they are really actually putting that in effect in July 1st. So I didn't get to read the statute because I was just too floored. But anyways, but yes.
That's pretty interesting. Back when I was, we're waiting on Janice to come into the backstage right now. Back when I was still, before I retired, I used to love to read the police science magazines and stuff, and some of the technology that they were working on they were just on the books with. It's kind of freaky. Imagine,
yeah,
Grizzly.
no.
Imagine Scotland Yard working with Godiva eyes.
Well, only thing I know, I can't. With that pursuit policy, AI, and everything else, no.
Brother, imagine working on studying the technology involved with Godiva eyes and taking and developing the last image that somebody sees before something happens to them. I mean,
you are freaking me out.
100%.
So our guest is here, by the way.
Okay, great.
But we need to discuss this another, because this is far-fetched, ladies and gentlemen.
We will.
Jan, welcome to the show. Glad to have you. How you doing there? Can you hear us okay?
Hello, Janice. Hello.
We can see you and hear you. Can you hear us? Janice.
Someone say something. I can't hear anybody.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
we can hear you.
We can hear you.
We can hear you good. We can hear you very good.
Well, she's figuring out her audio. What is the name of that movie, Jeremiah Sutton, with Tom Cruise in it? And every time somebody does the pre-murder and they think about something, what is that movie called? And they go arrest them before the murder actually happens. Because
that sounds like Thought Police.
It is, but so I'm trying to figure out. Janice, you get your audio fixed so you can hear us? So, Thomas, what is the name of that movie? It's got Tom Cruise in it. Minority Report. Yes, I knew Jeremiah would come up with that name. So yes.
So what was the basis of that movie?
So that movie, basically, let's say that I'm just a normal human being, right? And you were the popo.
Mhm.
So I would have a thought that I'm going to murder somebody.
Mhm.
And before I would even do it, you would come and lock me up and arrest me.
Really?
Yeah, you need to check out that movie because a lot of
Yeah,
that stuff
I'll check
came
it
around.
out.
Like, Janice, did you fix everything?
Can you hear us, Jan?
Minority Report, yes.
Um,
But I'm telling you right now, Val, if Indiana passes this state IC code, which stands for Indiana Code, that's why it says IC. Kentucky is KRS, Kentucky Revised Statute. If they do this, I guarantee the other states will follow.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Can you hear us, Janice? Hello, testing, testing.
Cannot hear anything.
Your sound is good.
Well, let me kick her and let her bring her back in. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, so
So-
preemptive murder. That is correct, Chris. Preemptive
So-
murder.
Another aspect of the looking forward in that kind of stuff in that industry was, of course, rather than the officer asking you for your driver's license, Grizzly, just put your thumb on this pad here. I'll walk it up to the car, walk it up to your car, put your thumb on that, and you get an infrared scan. All your information comes out. There's no more of this.
Testing. Did that work, Janice? Janice, did that work? Can you hear me?
No.
So, Minority Report actually in public, what they did was they scanned your eyes
Okay, your pupil
and your retina in there. Yes,
Yeah.
and it would be like, "Hello, Mr. Val. Would you like to buy something today? You look good in the suit, Val. Would you like to buy this?" You remember when grocery stores went to motion sensors in the frozen aisle? Where you walked, it would light up.
Mhm.
So yeah, so
That's very interesting.
Jeremiah says, I got another movie recommendation for you two. I'm listening. Chris says she needs to change her audio setting. Janice, it's your audio setting. So, Irene, can you send me a frisbee? Actually, Irene, if you go to Grizzly Chris, and I'll type this out, and everybody, I keep maxing out on my friends list.
Mhm.
So what I did was I had to change my profile over to this on Facebook. So everybody can follow me because I kept saying I had to delete somebody to add somebody, and I felt bad for doing that. So I had to convert my profile from a private person to a public figure, which I really didn't want to do. But anyways, everybody else already knows me.
Janice, if you can hear us, why don't you try to leave the studio, try to reboot your computer, and then once it's rebooted, try the link again and see if that'll help reset your sound.
Okay, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm on my Galaxy Samsung phone.
Okay,
Hit speakerphone. Put it on speaker.
put it on speaker, Janice.
You're breaking up. I can't understand.
Put your phone on speaker. Put your volume on speaker.
The mic?
Yes, because we could hear you fine. We need you to hear us.
Now she just muted herself.
Yeah.
Now she just unmuted herself. Can you hear us? Testing. Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Test 1 2 1 2 1 2. This happens in this kind of work, and Lord knows I've done it.
Yeah, can you text her and tell her hit speakerphone?
Yeah. All right.
So Irene, you need to come on to the panel of psychics and people with abilities and work on some of these code cases. I know you like that. Barb Hartman comes around the corner, ladies and gentlemen. She's riding on the third horse. She's riding next to the rail. Here she comes. Well, welcome, Barb. Welcome. Hello. Well, it sounds like we are tuning in the space station there for a moment. So, but yeah, Irene, once I get done
can
with
you
the
hear
show,
me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
We hear you.
Can you hear us?
Okay, yes, I can hear you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Janice to the show. Mind, I think I just watched that Deja Vu. Anyways, we'll get back to that movie. Hey, Barb. So Janice, welcome to the show.
Hold
How are
on.
you doing? Okay. I do have handrails on my chair, so I am holding on.
Okay.
And Irene, right before we went live, one of my dolls committed suicide. It jumped off the top of my studio and landed on my keyboard, and I about fell out of my chair. I mean, it literally jumped. It did not fall. It went up in the air and out and over and onto me. Now, can you hear us, Janice?
Hello, Janice. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. What are you talking about? I'm sorry. You said use the speaker on my phone.
Yes.
Well, as long as you can hear us, you're okay. You're fine. You're good to go.
Okay.
We can hear you fine.
Okay.
So can you tell us,
Yeah,
Janice,
go
can you
ahead.
take a moment and tell us about yourself, how you got involved in Bigfootery? And I know you've been around a long time and you've had some good experiences growing up as a child. Can you share that with the listening audience, please?
So just give you a back history. Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Janice Carter. I grew up in Monroe County, Tennessee, where I am at now presently. I was sort of always around the Bigfoot ever since I was little. Uh, my grandfather was the original person who was involved with one that he named Fox or called Fox, which was a black male, had black hair, hair covered, hair suit, whatever you want to call it, hypertrichosis. Um, and I was about 3 years old, my first experience, but I thought that this Sasquatch Bigfoot was a gorilla that had escaped from the Atlanta Zoo that had come to see me. I remember seeing him across a ravine, which we called a ditch, in a line of pine trees peeking out from across the way. And I went and told my grandfather, and he immediately had me go inside. I was maybe three and a half at the time. And the next time that I saw Fox, I actually ran into the back of his leg when we were blackberry picking. I was taking a jug of water back to my grandfather on the back 40, and I ran into him. I thought he was a tree, but I ran into him. From there, I was introduced to him when I was about 7 and a half. That was a few months later. It was in the fall. And I was just curious. I grew up around him. I was curious about him. I wanted to learn everything I could about him. My grandfather explained him away because he always turned to the Bible for answers. As the Edomites, descendants from Esau. And at the time, I didn't question it.
She ran into it, Val.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean? I lost my voice. You were picking bear, and you ran. What did you think when you ran into it?
Excuse me?
So what did you think when you ran into it?
Can someone repeat?
What was your first impression when you ran into it, Janice?
Oh, I was scared to death.
Yeah.
Absolutely scared to death. I couldn't even talk. I actually messed myself. My grandfather had to take me back to the house. My grandmother had to clean me up. I was just terrified.
So were the neighbors aware of this? Of these?
Yes. We lived in a remote area for the time. At the time, it's not that remote anymore. It's actually very populated here in Monroe County.
Mm-hmm.
And but at the time, we only had a few neighbors, and when I say neighbors, they lived like a mile away from us, And most of the people, I'm sorry, I'm fiddling with my phone. I'm trying to get it to prop up here so I don't have to hold it constantly.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I know that the whites were aware of it, the Taylors, some of the rest of the people, Rogers and stuff, who were our closest neighbors. were aware of it. But you know, I found out years later, after going public with my case, so to speak, that even people that worked with my grandfather at Alcoa knew about them.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not real familiar with Tennessee. I mean, other than Cock County, because that's where when I retired, that's where I headed for, East Tennessee. When I retired, and we had we rented a bed and breakfast up there on the mountains. So is Monroe County East Tennessee, or is it Central, or can you give the listening audience an idea where it's
East
at?
Tennessee.
I'm sorry, did you say East Tennessee?
East Tennessee.
Okay, okay. So that's close to the Appalachian Mountains also.
It's close to where?
The Appalachian Mountains, the Great
Yes,
Smoky
the
Mountains.
Appalachian Mountains. I'm actually the farm is exactly 6 miles from the start of the Charhala Skyway.
Okay. Okay, cool. So your grandfather is, and I've read your material from our previous chit chats.
I'm sorry you broke up. My grandfather what?
I read your material, and from the material that I read, your grandfather raised this fox, this individual named Fox. Is that correct?
My grandfather didn't raise him. My grandfather built a relationship with him. Him and Ralph Elverhart were clearing the land back in the 40s, 1947, and either Fox was in the tree, he was a child at the time. Either Fox was in the tree or the tree fell on him. My grandfather took him to the house, him and Ralph did, and they looked around the neighborhood and around the community. Back then, they used to have little communities. All little towns had different communities in it, and they thought that he was disabled and handicapped individual at the time. They first had him at the house, and my grandmother wouldn't allow him to stay in the house because he was basically tearing it down. And so my grandfather took him up to the front barn. There's 2 barns on the original property. There was 112 acres. 54 acres was in Monroe County, and the other was in McMinn County. That's why a lot of people say, oh, well, the farm isn't as large as what I said it was. It was actually as large, but part of it was in a different county. So we paid taxes, land taxes in both counties. But that said, anyhow, my grandfather took him up to the barn when he was little and put him in the middle stall of the front barn. That stall is still demolished where his parents, Fox's parents, broke him out.
And so what was your relationship with that family of Bigfoots on that farm property then?
When I grew up, when I was little, my curiosity, I was very outgoing child. I was hyperactive and everything else. But from the time my grandfather took me to the barn to meet his fox, is what he called him, and a fox was in under a tree at the time and came out and got a plate of food and everything. I think it was sometime right around maybe December, late December, the 1st of January, when I really got curious about him, because Fox's wife, Sheba, she had twins, Blackie and Chico at the time. And I was like, oh, I wanted so badly to play with those babies, you know. But of course, she wouldn't let me touch them or get near them. She was ferocious with them, you know, if I tried to get near. But I got so I would follow them around. I'd climb trees thinking that they couldn't get to me if I was up in a tree, which was a myth because they can climb like nobody's business. And I guess from there, I mean, you know, I would watch and observe them. I'd play hooky from school at times and get myself in trouble, and my grandmother would be ready to kill me when I came down out of the tree. She used the hickory method. She had me go break a switch, and I'd get switchings, but you know, that was back then. It's not today. But my grandfather, he finally gave me a little notebook. Um, I call them little notebooks. They used to be different from what they are now. And I'd carry a pencil around with me. And I always been dyslexic, but I would try to write down some word that I heard them say. And then I'd go to my grandfather and ask him. And this kept going on, what it meant. This kept going on until I was about 10. I got a little bit braver when I was 10 years old. And I decided, okay, I'm going to talk to them, you know, because, and they talk in English. It's hard to understand them because they will talk about 3 times as fast as what we do. But if you ask them to slow it down, you can understand them. Of course, the males are very, very baritone deep. Females are really, really high pitched, a lot of them, and children can range in between in their voices. But I just started asking them, and I learned from them. That's the only thing I know to tell anybody is I learned from them. I also learned that not all of them are nice and friendly, and they're not cuddly teddy bears.
So I take it you ran into some mean ones.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, I can't hear.
I take it you ran into some mean Sasquatch also. No, you can't hear it. Okay, Grizz, let me just ask one thing. You never take a switch to me, Grizz.
Janice, you sound loud and clear on our end. Can you hear us at all?
Yeah, it's very low. I can hear you better than I can.
Val?
No, I can hear
Val better than
I
me.
think Val sort of echoes when he talks. I don't know how I've been adjusting level my volume, but I can't get him not to echo.
Okay.
But you can hear me okay, though, right?
And now it's like it's echoing on both.
Okay. Do you have the program on your phone playing right now, Janice? If you do, shut it off. If you have this show playing on your phone, shut it off because it will cause echo.
If I have what on my phone?
Grizzly, can you tell her?
Yeah, if you got YouTube open or anything, close it so it don't give you feedback.
If I have YouTube?
Yeah, open, close it. Just only have the link open only, nothing else.
The only thing I have open is the link.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I don't have any other program running in the background or anything.
Okay. Well, Grizz, what I was saying was, if don't ever take a switch to me.
No.
Now, I remember.
She talks to him. She learns the language. You need to ask her what OCO means. Maybe she knows, but she says she talks English to him.
Now, I remember growing up on a farm with some Southern people when I was very, very little, and just like Janice said, I remember Mama taking some branches off the tree and giving a little girl a whooping with that stick. But you know, we don't see that anymore like that. But yeah, I can understand that very well.
So,
one of the things that Janice,
you do have her phone number, right? Her actual phone number.
Yeah.
Text it to me and I'll call her. I'm gonna hook up my system to my phone to the system to where we can get her on here on audio.
Okay.
And let's see here.
So a long time ago, when I read this book from Janice, I'm going to tell you something. It opened my eyes up to a lot of stuff involving Sasquatches and stuff.
All right, I got everything. I got the phone system in line and
All right,
ready.
hang on. Let me send her a text message real quick.
Okay.
Just
I just can't believe this is pretty wild. Hey, Stingray,
Yeah.
welcome to the show. I'm glad you're here.
Well, you know, I was bumped off a couple times at the start of the show, and then camera goes on and off. I don't know what the deal is. That's not happened to me like that before.
Can you hear us okay? I was going to call you there if you didn't.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you,
Yeah,
but
we can
she
hear you
can't
good.
hear us.
For heaven's sakes, please.
Yeah, just tell her that I'm going to call her from a 502 number if that's okay. Text her and let her know.
Janice, I just sent you a text message, and then when you send that back to me, I'm going to feed that over to Grizz, and then he's going to call you. And then I think we'll be okay like that.
So just let me know when she gives you the
Yeah.
thumbs up. But no, I just cannot believe. So I mean, she wanted to play with the babies.
Mm-hmm.
What? No, not.
She's gonna tell you that she's watched them quite a bit from afar, and from all of her observations and stuff. She worked with Mary Green to write this book. That if you haven't read it, you need to read it, because there's a lot of stuff in there that you'll learn about Sasquatch, their behavior, their mannerisms, their speech, etc., etc. It's very good. Very, very good. So what I'm going to do while we're on the air, Grizz, I'm sending you a message right now.
Yeah, I tell you what, while we figure this out, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We'll be right back. Right, welcome back. I do have Janice on the phone. Janice, can you hear me? All right. Well, we got. I mean, you're live. Can you hear? Okay, Val.
Yes, I can hear.
All right, go ahead. Take it away. It's all you. Yeah, no, it's all you. You're live on the air.
Hey, Grizzly. Grizzly.
Yeah.
It's not coming out very good. Thank her if you can, if she can hear you. Thank her, and
Nah,
then we'll.
she's already gone. Yeah, it's not working out at all,
Yeah,
ladies and gentlemen.
it's not good.
I do apologize about that, but I do have a system set up to where we can actually receive phone calls and everything.
Yes.
But
Bluetooth connected.
I wanted to hear the story because
Yes.
I mean,
Yes, we'll have her
So-
back on another time. We'll get the sound business straightened out. You know, you were talking earlier about the doll or
Bluetooth
something
disconnect-
falling off
Bluetooth
the
connected.
shelf or
it
something.
did not fall off.
It
It
didn't fall.
jumped.
It
It did
jumped.
not tilt over.
Let me.
It jumped up in the air and it came across the studio and landed on my keyboard right before the light. I about boo-boo myself.
Bluetooth
Now,
disconnected.
I'll tell you,
Bluetooth
while I
connected.
was at Detroit Receiving Hospital a few years ago with my wife, we were sitting in the room. I had my phone plugged in, all kinds of people walking by, and I had the chair set so I could watch people walk by the room, doctors, nurses, a lot of chitter chatter going on. I was talking to my wife. There was an outlet near one of the examining room tables. So I plugged my phone in with a charger while I'm talking to my wife. And I kid you not, stone cold sober. I watched my phone unplug from the outlet and fling itself across the room. And I looked at my wife and I looked back at the phone on the floor with the cord and the charger. And I asked her, I said, "Did you see that?" And she said, "Yeah." Now that's what I seen with my own eyes. Detroit Receiving Hospital, a very old hospital. It's seen its share of misery and energy but have you guys ever been in the hospitals and stuff to look at those things?
So a lot of people go in the hospital. I have my fair share in the hospital
Mhm,
and hospitals
mhm.
because of my injuries and my complications that I had. So have I ever investigated one? No, I have not. I have totally changed views on a lot of things after I encountered that cloaking video and made sense on a lot of things when I was hunting by myself. People laugh about me not wanting to go in the woods alone anymore. I do not. I will not go mushroom hunting by myself. I will not go in the woods alone anymore.
But you still
I'm
like
sorry.
mushrooms, right?
Oh, I still love morel mushrooms. Yes. Now I said morel mushrooms. So yes. But yeah. So, but I'm telling you, things have changed. You know, I do not want to ever encounter dogman. I've too many people I know that's actually has. No, I'm good. I'm good. So
Yeah, it's just you know, I'm not 100% sold on that. But on the other hand, you know, I'm not putting it out that I want to see something like that. But I'm not 100% sold on that. But back to your back to the young lady in the UK. I know one of your shows you do missing persons and that kind of stuff.
yes, sir, that is correct.
And I think you're familiar with what I've done and my feelings on that. You know, in spite of what some people say, for instance, I seen somebody one time posted on my group site. There's not one lick of evidence that Sasquatch has ever harmed or injured or taken a person. Not one lick of evidence. Well, when somebody says something like that, A, they're either ignorant or two, they know something that they don't want to talk about. And as a Bigfoot data miner researcher, I know better. And whether or not you hear about it, um, it occurs, but not all missing persons are taken or harmed by Bigfoot, Sasquatch. In my opinion, there's a lot of reasons for people disappearing in the woods. A lot of it of Bigfoot, Sasquatch. It's, you know, there's such things as human trafficking, crime, suicides, volunteer missing, other predator animals, wolves, bears, cougars, and accidents. You know, accidents happen. So, but yes, I'm a firm believer that people have been disappeared by Sasquatches.
Oh, I guarantee that. I know they have.
Mm-hmm.
She even told you there are mean ones out there. They're all not nice and cuddly. I try to tell people that, but they don't listen to me. They want to go up and hug them and kiss them and give them peanut butter and candy and
scrub them
Reese's cups. Yeah, right.
Scrub them with strawberry bubble bath and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
That's not me. I'll defer to the experts for that. So yeah, in my, I don't know if I said this before. I don't know that I discussed this before on this program, but my curtain call before I retired, I volunteered to look for that missing individual, clearly out of my jurisdiction. And he was definitely a homicide victim. And in fact, to this day, his death is an unsolved case. It's still open, but you know, it happens, and it's sad. But what I learned in the interim was that there's a lot of people like that all across the country. There's a lot of people that are looking and waiting for their loved one, their brother, their sister, their mom, their dad, their cousin, their best friend, their lover, waiting for them to return home and stuff, and they never will. And while I was in the business, there is a national database. I don't know that a lot of listeners know this, but there's a national database with the acronym NAMUS. And what it means is name us. And it's got hundreds of thousands of missing people from across the country. And I believe Canada as well, that are there because they went missing. And it's just mind-boggling to see this. But spending hours and hours and hours flipping through these cases and these pictures and photos and stuff, it's just to consider that many people that go missing that you don't hear about is just unbelievable. It's incredible. It is incredible. And a lot of these things, what I've noticed was a lot of these incidents occur along interstate highways. In particular, the one that I was looking at was Interstate 10 that ran from the Atlantic coast to the Pacific coast in California. And never in my life did I realize, or did I really understand, that this is one interstate that traverses across the entire country. But to see the magnitude of those cases all along that freeway, that interstate, is just, I'm telling you, Grizz, it's just hard to grasp. It really is. But that was my experience with that kind of stuff. And once I was complete, and I did, by the way, locate that missing individual that was out of Ohio, and I was able to see that his remains were returned home to his family in Ohio. I eulogized his service. It took another 3 months, about 3 months, to cut through state and federal permits to take that human remains across state lines and stuff. But in a large way, I see that as a healing process for me too, because it was more or less like self redemption. Um, you know, I'm not a perfect person. I've never been a perfect person. I'm imperfect, and I live in an imperfect world. And I'd like to think that my life as an adult was in service to mankind, and that's what we did, Grizz. You and I both, in Stewart before us. He was on here from Houston, Texas. He knows. It's thankless work. It's hard work. We did it, but in any way you look at it, it's what we did. It's a service to mankind, and I'm not going to forget the firefighters too, because there was a lot of times when the firefighters were the only people there to help, and they were there
Right.
a large portion of the time and stuff. But it's, to me, dealing with that kind of stuff, emotionally, spiritually, it's draining. It's like it ran me down, and I felt it was my time to take a bow and say so long. I've had enough. Hang my hat up, hang my badge up, and move on with my life and stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I never got back into volunteering to get into more of this kind of stuff, because I was asked to get involved in looking at more cold cases and stuff. And honestly, I probably would have thrived in that, but it was too draining emotionally and spiritually. It drained me. It sucked the living life right out of me, and I had to step away from it.
Yeah, well, no, and a lot of people can resonate and some cannot. And I was actually, I don't know why your camera keeps going in and out, but I actually was interviewing a person that has abilities last year. And I was like, you know what? I'm curious. And she is very well known. And she is very well known. I'll say that again. And so during the show, I had a question, and I was like, so are you familiar with the Appalachian Trail? And she's like, yes, why? And I said, okay. I said, you know anything about missing people? She said, yeah, I know some. I watched some of the stuff on TV. And I said, okay. Now, what I want you to do is tell me what's going on with these people on the Appalachian Trails just disappearing. And she said, really? And I was like, well, yeah. And she's one, I don't know what it's called, but she has to get a piece of paper out and she has to scribble or something. And she was scribbling and she was like, okay. And because I want to know where these people are going to. And she kept saying she's seeing graves, mass graves. And she says it looks like numerous serial killers that are unknown, that are not known to be recognized, that are working. They're not caught, that it's man-made. And she said man-made. And now you and I, we pick up on key terms.
Mm-hmm.
So I let her do her little spiel. And she was seeing some of the people jogging and everything. So she did her little spiel. And I said, okay, now what is supernatural? And she just sat back and looked at me and got real quiet. And she started scribbling. She put her pencil down. She wouldn't answer it. That was in the conversation in the interview, pretty much. Whatever she saw scared the hell out of her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, scribe writing or spirit writing. Thank you. So that's what it's called, Barb.
Well,
So,
I do know that.
so what does that tell you?
Well, it tells me that she doesn't want to go there. There's something there that's bothersome to her, and she doesn't want to go there. But
Yes.
One of the early in my adult life, I took I participated in a course. It was called EST, EST, not ESP as in Paul, EST as in Tom. That's outlawed in this country now.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. And it was billed as a self-enrichment training for young movers and shakers of the community. These were people that went through this program. This is pretty creepy. People that went through this program, and it was very, very expensive. I know I spent my tuition money for college for that semester to go to this. And I went there because my girlfriend wanted to go, and she went. And of course, at the time, I want to go where she went. But it was for young movers, future movers and shakers. And I'm talking about political people. I'm talking about corporate people. But this supposedly started in San Francisco, California, and of course it moves east. And the S program, the one particular training that I went through at the time, it called for, and they controlled the temperature, they controlled when you can eat. It was like an 8-hour program. It was held in a large auditorium. And one of the training functions they did, and I got into a verbal joust with one of the proctors in that training program. So, of course, he calls me up to the stage, and they have the lights on, the stage lights on me, and he's in the audience in the aisle with a microphone, and we're going back and forth. And so what happens is, and this auditorium is filled with people. They dim the lights.
Connected.
They dim the lights in the auditorium. The spotlight is on me, up above me, and he signals 4 proctors to come out. These are 4 strangers to me. One of them step in front of me, nose to nose, staring at me. The second one goes to my left. The third one goes to my right. And the fourth one goes right behind me with his nose to the back of my head. I can feel him breathing in my hair. Now he's asking me from the audience, his words, how do you feel? How do you really feel? Now, you don't see the audience out there, but they're out there. You can hear them clearing their throats. You can hear them cough every now and then. You can hear them shuffling their feet in nervousness. How do you feel? Well, it's not comfortable, I'll tell you that. But this is part of the training. He then calls another 25 people up on the stage. And again, proctors come out, strangers in this training come out, and they do the same thing to them, standing in front, on the sides, and the back of them. And he's asking them, how do you feel? What do you feel? I'm going to tell you something, Grizz. I seen a grown man standing there and cry like a baby right there because he didn't like it. You're standing in somebody's comfort zone. Each of us as human beings have at least a 6-foot security zone around us. There are some cultures around the world that you will offend them if you stand too close to them. Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that is correct.
and it's very uncomfortable. But again, they controlled the heat. It was freezing cold in that place. They tried to make you jealous. You know, if you had a wife or a girlfriend, you'd have somebody, some other man rub it on their back and stuff. And, you know, I'm from the old school. I didn't like that. I didn't like that kind of stuff. You know, don't make me jealous like that. Don't make me angry. But this is what they wanted to do. This is the kind of stuff that they did. And we went home one night talking about this. We dropped our friend off, and we were sitting in the car. We were talking to her before she got out of the car, and I was saying, you know, I don't know that I like this training. I don't like this. I spent my tuition money for this, and I don't know that I like it. And I'm going to tell you something. When I said that, there was a breeze. I don't know where the breeze came from, but a breeze came and it started moving those chimes on the porch. And we heard, I know that I heard it. I know my wife heard it. I know that our friend heard a wolf howl. I'm going to tell you something. That was pretty creepy stuff. And
yeah, what kind of training was this? They were asking you.
that was EST. EST. If you could look it up, you could still see it. You could still see it on a computer if you want to look it up and stuff. And it's very, I don't know. I thought that I read that they try to hypnotize people. And again, a lot of these people that went to this training became young movers and shakers in their community. I mean, they become politicians, they become corporate leaders. And I know that for my part, you know, I went in law enforcement, and from there I was kind of ushered into what they called Leadership 21, which again are movers and shakers of the community. Remember, I'm from Southeast Michigan, down from Detroit, and I was never a member. I was never a business owner, but I was brought into the Chamber of Commerce and brought into some more training. And from there, I went on to being called into, again, volunteer work, but I became I was asked to participate in a citizens advisory board for Detroit for a large juvenile detention center. So those are the kind of things that I'm talking about that you kind of get whisked away into. But
Janice is back, by the way.
is she
Janice,
back?
can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm outside right now. We're experiencing major thunderstorms here,
Mm-hmm.
so that may be part of my problem.
Oh, I can hear her good now.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Can you hear us very good, Janice?
Yes, I'm outside though. I'm not in my
Okay.
house.
All right, great. I know we got some rain up here in Detroit. You got rain down there in Tennessee. How about you, Grizz?
Yeah, no, it's raining right now in northern Kentucky. So yeah.
Yeah, we need that. Okay, so we're back at the farm, and you were talking about fox. You were talking about some of the Sasquatches not being real friendly. I do remember a little incident that occurred down there on your grandfather's farm of a young girl. Can you tell us the story about the young girl?
Yes, I was young at the time. One of the fox's son, one of the twins, the Blackie, we called him Blackie, actually molested a young girl at the time, back years ago.
Molested her, you say?
Yes, raped her, molested her.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how often that occurs. 'Cause
I don't know how often. I know that after I told that story, and I didn't go into detail because the identity, I do not want the identity of the woman known or
No,
anything,
no, of course.
or her family, and they still, the family still lives in the area.
Mhm.
But that said, I had heard other reports. I've had other people send me reports of where the males, even the females, the Bigfoot, uh, tried to approach and um, fornicate with people.
Mhm.
There was a case that back when Mary Green was still living,
Mhm.
that this one young woman sent her and said that this male Bigfoot in California was following her around
Bluetooth
and
disconnected.
was
Bluetooth
inappropriately
connected.
approaching her.
Grizz, you did hear what she said about
Yeah,
the lady.
I'm sitting here trying
You're
to remain
stunned.
calm.
You're stunned, my
I
friend.
just hurt my neck. All right, for whiplash.
Mhm.
Now I've heard stories, but I never had them confirmed.
Mhm. Now, as a researcher, I found a report out of Detroit, out of Texas. It was
Mhm.
an early report, I believe, in the 20s, the 30s. I think maybe the 30s. And
Mhm.
Grizz, the way I read this report and the way the witness brought this report on, if you look at a report, my friend, you can tell whether another police officer wrote this. In other
Mhm.
words, he's whistleblowing on his agency. But he talked about an incident where two people were meeting in a secret place in a secret time in the woods, unbeknownst to their family, their spouses and stuff. And they heard a scream, and they got up. They got up, half dressed, fled to the car, got in the cars to flee home. On the way out of the woods, this is what was in the report, and it was chased. The car was chased. The beast broke the window, grabbed the man's throat, ripped it out. The woman went into shock, but she drove herself home, half dressed, with this stranger in the car with her. And
Ugh.
apparently, she went into some hospital, and nothing else was said about it. Um, the way I read the report was, you go to this department and ask them for that report, and they'll have it. Well, it's been my experience that things like this nowadays, it's
Mhm.
impossible to get. Those goes into the archives, and you'll never see them again. They disappear. It's not for public consumption. That's number one. Number two, in those books written by Pallades, there's one incident in there where I think a blonde-haired lady or something was hiking. She was alone. Somehow she was flung off of a cliff or something. And when researchers reached her, her blouse was pulled up over her
Mm.
dress,
Mhm.
which is unnatural, because when you fall like that, you don't expect to see somebody molested or look like they had been molested.
Yeah. Um, that said, I know that uh, you all quote, Val quotes Fred Bradshaw, some of his uh, writings and stuff back in the day. Fred actually, back in 2000, and I want to say 3 or 4, I can't remember exactly when, um, had gotten a report of one that had actually attacked a young girl on one of the reservations, and was trying to
Mm,
rape her.
mhm. I
And
also
that was up in Washington State somewhere.
mhm. I also had run into a report of a young man who wrote this report, who
Mhm.
claims that I think his family was from down south someplace. Mama was out. Daddy wasn't there. Mama was out in the field, uh, hoeing the garden or something, because that's all they had to eat was whatever Mama made out there. He's seen a Sasquatch, fully excited, and it started to from the tree line. It started to approach Mama out there in the field, the garden, and he grabbed a garden hoe, and charged at it because he was convinced that it was going to attack his mother out there.
Mm.
So when I look at these reports and I see reports of Sasquatches that look like black people, with the hair and stuff, when I
Mhm.
see these reports with Sasquatches with blonde hair, green eyes, blonde hair, blue eyes, and I know for a fact from my own personal encounter, uh, these this being did not have a hairy face like a gorilla, like a wolf man. It looked very, very human, but there are no humans walking around 8.5, 9 foot tall that look like
No.
this. So I have to believe that there are human genes mixed with these things. Now, there's reports also out of Canada during a plane crash where one of the passengers was a baby, and the baby was unaccounted for in the
No.
in the passenger list. And there's other reports, follow-up reports, that say that they seen Sasquatches with a little boy that looked like the baby would have looked like had it aged 6 years.
Mhm.
And so there's this stuff that goes on and on and on.
Well, now, back it's been back ages ago. Mary Green and she actually got a photo of it. I asked Scott Carpenter because she left a lot of stuff with him, a lot of photos and stuff. I asked him if he had a photo of it. But back years ago, we were up in Livingston, and actually were doing some research and interacting with some of the Bigfoot up there. And there was this female that had this very human looking little boy with her. And it has haunted me to this day because we could not keep up with her. She snatched that child up and took off. She had her own Bigfoot babies, youngsters, but this was a human child that was with her. He looked like he may have been 9 years old. I can remember him to this day, because it's just like imprinted on my brain, and it's worried me and worried me. And I was like, we went to the law enforcement and searched all the missing children's reports and everything else, and never came up with anything.
Now, I recall 2 reports out of Oklahoma around the reservation, maybe not. 2 reports out of Oklahoma, one of which, it seems to me, the first one was a Native American Indian who had an attempt. She stopped an attempt to abduct her baby from a tent when they were camping.
Mm-hmm.
And another family comes along a different time, a different month, and this lady, having relived that experience, warned the mother, if you got a baby, if you got a small child, watch him. And she explained to her what had happened to her. And sure enough, according to this woman, she was asleep one night and she felt her child sliding off the sleeping bag, sliding out of the tent. and she said that there was a hairy arm pulling that child out of that tent. Now,
Mm.
what I've found and what I've also learned was, according to some people, and this is from Native Indian people, they say that when a Sasquatch mama loses her child,
Mhm.
when they come around people, they're looking to find a human child to
Yeah,
replace
kidnap a
their
human
baby.
child.
Yeah, to replace that baby or child, whatever it is.
Well, now I do know this. I've had my own experience with this myself. It was in Pocahontas County in Virginia. We were up in, I'll just go ahead and say, I don't care because everybody's research areas overlap everybody else's. There's no, this is mine and you can't come into it. It was at Watauga State Park up there. And there was a female at the time who had lost her child. And there was several of us camping. I had my daughter Holly with me at the time. She was 7 years old, and my friends had their little girl who was 5. And this female tried to lure the other little girl out into the woods with her. She was determined that she was going to take this other little girl. And we actually, the child took off, the little girl took off, and we had to go after her. We were scared to death that this female was going to snatch her and take her off, and we'd never see her again. We ended up leaving, but we had returned, and visited that area since. But that was not a pleasant experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been very, very leery of them snatching up my daughter. My youngest one used to go out and play with the children, and being around Fox and all his family members and everything. And Fox has been deceased since 2010, but being raised up around him, my daughter knows just about as much as I do about him. But she would go out and play with the little ones, Squeaky and stuff, when he was little. And if we even went to Don Keaton's South Fork one time, and thank God I had other people with me because she got out of the tent and was down there feeding all our food and marshmallows to the little Bigfoot up there. And I was like, oh my God. And one of our friends happened to get up and note that she was down there doing it. He tried to video record her doing so, and I'm like, I felt like wearing her out. She's never had a whipping in her life. She's had a firm scolding, but that was one time Mama almost came within an inch of whipping her.
Mm-hmm. Now, Janice, it seems to me in the material that I read from your book, the book
Mm-hmm.
you and Mary wrote,
Mm-hmm.
it spoke about Sasquatch families, man and woman. What
Mm-hmm.
happens when a woman becomes adulterous in a family unit?
What happens when one does what?
Becomes adulterous when that female
Oh,
has an affair with another wayward male.
If the female takes and mates with another male, or goes off with another male besides of her husband, it is very taboo in their beliefs, and they will cut her nose off and disfigure her.
It seems like I remember, it was the nose or ear or something that leaves a permanent disfigurement as a message to the rest. Now, what happens to the wayward male?
The wayward male, the male is allowed to have more than one wife.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't get this, but I don't judge because this is their way of living, their, the things that they do. Just as long as he can provide for those wives,
Mhm.
He's allowed to have as many wives as he can provide for. Most of the time, it's usually sisters that he takes,
Mhm.
but, as wives, or they're related in some way, shape, or form. But he's allowed to do whatever he wants to.
Hmm.
Except for raping. That's not allowed. They'll make him an outcast if they rape a
Mhm.
female.
So what happens if the male doesn't want to be an outcast?
If he doesn't want to be a what?
An outcast. If he doesn't want to be banished from the family unit.
Well, then he doesn't break their laws.
Mm-hmm. What is the punishment if he does?
If he breaks them, he's considered an outcast. He's considered dead to them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have anything to do with him. I mean, even if it's just like Blackie. Blackie is actually an outcast from the family group, also from the tribal group. And Blackie, we still encounter him. He still visits the farm. I've had to deal with him. I even had to draw a gun on him one evening because he was going to try to break in my half sister's house. But that said, except for his immediate family, the rest of them do not even acknowledge that he's alive.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody wants to know, what are their beliefs? What do they believe in?
What is what?
Their beliefs? What do they believe in? Are
What
they
do they
like
believe
us?
in?
Yeah, are they like us, civilized, or
Do they have rules? Who's the mayor? Who's the leader of these
It's
family
sort of
units?
set up like tribal community, like indigenous people. That you have your leaders, you have your elders, you have your story keepers, your history keepers, your writers, and your healers, and on and on and on. Different ones, different members, or different positions in the family, even if it's just grandmother or mother.
Oh, that's unbelievable.
And they believe in God. I do know that. They
They
believe
do.
in God. They believe in the devil. They believe in they have their own version of Jesus Christ, which basically is the same, that he visited here with them too when he was here on the planet with us. But then you have some beliefs that I shouldn't judge. It's like, okay, where do you get this idea from? I do question. And it's like they believe that they were among the first creations. Okay, if we read our Bible as a history book, not just for the religious and beliefs in God and whatnot. If we read that, it says, on the whatever day, the fifth day, I think it was sixth day, when God created the original mankind, he created both male and female, and he told them to go forth in his image, in their, told them to go forth and be fruitful and multiply. Okay, then he creates Adam in a different way, because he takes the dust and breathes into the nostrils of Adam. And Eve is actually created out of Adam from his rib. That said, the Bigfoot think that they were among the first creation.
Some people say that some people believe that Bigfoot Sasquatches come from, they're interplanetary. They come from a different planet.
I don't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
My personal belief is not that, because anymore. Okay, if they're from a different planet, then we are also, because our DNA does not match up with anything else here exactly.
That's
And
funny. So
And their DNA doesn't match up with anything on the father's side that's here on this planet. So, yeah, there's a possibility. We may all be aliens.
yes, yes, and one of the things that I was going to say was there was a professor at Wayne State University in Detroit who claimed that we're all star people,
Yes.
and what he meant by that when he explained it was that when we look up in the sky and see meteors fall to the ground, they go into the soil, we plant the food, we eat the food, we consume the food, and whatever material is in
Mhm.
this soil is consumed in the nutrients of the
Mhm.
food that we eat. Our livestock feed from the soil, enriched by meteors and other sedentary particles. Therefore, we are, in essence, star people too. Does that make sense? Grizz, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense. So, a couple of questions people want to know: is Bigfoot a part of the original giants that roamed the earth from the beginning?
I don't honestly know for a fact, but I would consider them a part of them, yes. Because there was giants in the beginning, according to creationists, in the Bible. A lot of your mythologies have giants in it. Your lost books of the Bible, your Sanskrit, listen, yeah, all of these mythologies have giants and mention giants. So yes, definitely they were here. Now, whether they were Sasquatch or not remains to be known.
Now, do they actually speak with people verbally, or do they mind speak, or can they do both?
They can do both. They have
Wow.
they have abilities that I believe that we once had, and we've just been taught to suppress them throughout the centuries, so we don't use them anymore.
That was repeated by the government anthropologist interviewed by Carrie. What was her last name? Carrie. What was her name? Carrie Cassidy,
Hmm.
who that this army major was tasked with studying Sasquatches. He became friends with Sasquatch and
Hmm.
subsequently took the Sasquatch out of the country.
Hmm.
And according to him, the
Hmm.
Sasquatch, like you said, in confirmation of what you just said, Janice, the Sasquatch is able to speak in ways that span distance and time. They
Yeah.
can it can be in another country and communicate with other Sasquatches through thought.
Hmm.
And
Well, that's said. I don't claim to be psychic. I've had people call me, uh, among other things. I've been called everything in the book, from hoaxer to liar to psychological idiot and everything else. Massive hallucination, you name it. But that said, okay, I do know that they can telepath. That's what I call it. They can use telekinesis, which they can move things without even being near them to touch them. They have a lot of what we consider paranormal abilities, but is it truly paranormal abilities for them? Okay, I know because I have mind spoke with them, what we call mind speaking, and that is their term for it, not mine, um, with a bunch of them. And there's nothing quite like, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This stuff, nobody in their right mind could make this up. Even if you were a pathological liar, you couldn't make this stuff up and keep your stories and facts straight. But that said, Try having one pop in your head and send you on a hunt for lavender everything in Walmart. You know, it's like they can do it at will anytime they want to, with anybody they want to. I have to be fairly close to one of them to be able to mind speak back and forth and understand what they're saying to me.
How
Yeah.
long do they live? What's their average lifespan?
Excuse me?
How long do they live? What's their average lifespan?
The average lifespan that, because of what we're doing studies in the field, we have learned that they can live to be 150 years old.
Wow.
So they get quite a bit older than we do. And most people, that's the thing, most people in Homo sapien, when we are giant or we have excessive hairiness, which is called hypertrichosis, we also don't have a very long lifespan. We usually die in our 30s, 40s, early 50s. With them, it doesn't work that way.
What was the
Yeah.
name of that Russian Sasquatch female that was taken captive, and she
Zana,
Zana, yes,
yeah,
and so she had so a human,
yeah. She had children
father,
by human fathers.
yeah, so she bore youngsters supposedly by a human father,
Hmm.
and what, a couple of them died, one of them lived to be I don't know, a ripe old age, but he
Yeah,
but he still had features of Sasquatch.
yeah, that was Quit.
Yeah.
That was her son Quit. Raya is her granddaughter, and Raya's grandchildren. Raya's older now, and she even has grandchildren. They have done the DNA test. Of course, one of the guys who did it said that she was Sahara African from way back, you know, um, when they did the DNA on her, but he never did find the father's side. We know that you can trace the mother's side of the DNA, which is your mitochondrial DNA, and run it to the source, of whoever they came down from. But
It's
when you go to the nucleoside, you can't match it up with anything.
Incidentally, Janice, when I was talking of that missing individual that I went looking for, Grizz, and you'll recall this, it was in fact, as Janice said, mitochondrial DNA that I used to identify this individual, because the mother's mapping, her double helix mitochondrial DNA is there in the siblings, in the offspring.
Yeah.
And it was very, very important in identifying an individual based on the mother's DNA makeup.
Yes. Yes.
So that was pretty interesting.
Some of the people are asking, do they cook their food or do they eat it raw?
Both. And it's a myth that they don't use fire, because they do use fire. They just don't use big fires that are going to give away their location unless they're in a cave. And then there's usually a smoke hole. And I have found many a location where they were at, especially in the wintertime, where they're using fire inside these caves. And they have like a smoke hole in the roof of the cave. So if you find the opening to the cave, you found them.
Excuse me, that's something that's verified and confirmed by the late Bobby Short as well. She says the same thing. Absolutely, Bigfoot Sasquatches are familiar with fire.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
familiar with fire.
yeah.
They use a lot of it with herbs and stuff that they make teas and stuff with. It's
Mhm.
just a small fire, and I've got, I don't have them so that I can share them, but I have photos and stuff of their fire rings
Mhm.
where they've
S-
been out in the middle of no man's land, and this is not where campers go, you know.
mhm. So when we're walking around in the mountains
Hmm.
and we smell burning fire, smoke and stuff, and we don't know where it's coming from,
Hmm.
good possibility that it's coming from it emanates from underground.
Yeah, there's a possibility that it is. And they
So
do
great.
use, like I said, they use cave systems and stuff. It's like here, a lot of people, back years ago, they tried to discredit me and discredit my case. Um, um, I'm just going to say it, Lauren Coleman did. So he sent his brother down here along with some other people from up in Michigan. And they came to the farm and they said, oh, well, she doesn't live anywhere near the Smoky Mountains, you know, and there's no way, it's too, civilized and everything. And I'm like, look, buddy, you can look out the back door from the farm and see the mountains. We
Mhm.
live in what we call the knobs. They don't call them the foothills of the Smokies. Here in the South, we call them knobs, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
And I'm like, we have the Lost Sea right in Monroe County. It's on between Madisonville and Sweetwater. It is exactly 8 miles from the old farm, you
Mhm.
know, and that's it. That is Craighead Caverns. It's the second largest underground lake or whatever you want to call it, sea, water in the world.
Mhm.
And those caverns run for miles. That cave system does. I used to lead tours back when I was a teenager down there, and there's parts of the cave that you just don't take people into.
Mhm. Why not? Why don't you take people into parts of those caves?
Do what?
Why don't you take people in parts of those caves?
Because the Bigfoot are there, and a lot of it has a lot of artifacts in different chambers of the cave from the Native Americans
Mhm.
that were once here. There's a part that we do take them into, which is a large chamber that opens up. You have to go through a narrow passageway, but once you get into it, it opens up. We call it the ballroom. It was the
Mhm.
dance room.
Mhm.
There's another a chamber that opens up into a large cavern. You know
Mhm.
that they stored food in.
Mhm.
There's a lot of artifacts that are still in those caves in the back parts of the caves where you don't take the tours,
Mhm.
people in there because you don't want them to disturb it. I mean, there's paintings on the wall. If those paintings, if sunlight or light or camera or anything, if you snap a picture, it can damage those paintings.
Mhm. So, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, they also use
Do what?
mod Bigfoot, Sasquatch also use modern um, utensils, spoons and forks and dishes and cups and needles and thimbles and blankets and stuff. Is that
Okay,
correct?
hold on, my signal. I can't hear you. I'm
Mhm.
trying to get around. I heard something about utensils.
Yes. So Bigfoot, Sasquatches use modern appliances such as
Well, to a certain extent,
dishes, cups,
if you,
blankets.
yeah, if you gift them something like, okay, for instance, I, they'll use pots and pans.
Mhm.
You know, I don't know that they actually cook in them, but I do know that they used to go to the creek in the spring and get water in them. So, you
Mhm.
know, they'll use. I've gifted them knives. I even had Winnie Bojo, asked me for a left-handed because he's left-handed hoof knife which is a horse, a tool that you use on horses' hooves. What in the world he needed with it, I have no clue, but I found him one finally. They'll use hammers, they'll use hoes, shovels, different types of things like that. It's even like over in where Igor Borsif is right now. We had one of the males over there, not Gisha, not Greg, but one of the other ones asked for a gun, and I said, "Don't you dare give him a gun. We don't know whether he knows how to use it or not."
Now, there's a report out of Alaska where a couple hunters were watching a Sasquatch enter onto a beach, walking up to a whale carcass, and they watch this Sasquatch cutting off portions of meat. When it walked away with this 200-pound slab of flubber on its shoulder, they approached the carcass and they found a serrated bladed knife that it left. Where did the knife come from, I wonder?
Well, I'm sure they either took it from someone's property, or else someone gifted it to them.
Well, thank goodness they don't give it guns.
Do what?
Thank goodness they don't give Sasquatch guns.
Yeah, don't give them guns. I don't recommend that. And I do not recommend giving them liquor or whiskey or any of that stuff, because they do really, really bad. I did post on Val's group there, it's been a while back, where Daff attacked the cabin truck that Igor and the team stay in out there in the Ural Mountains. That said, what happened is, against my advice, they decided that they would give them vodka. Daft did
Russian vodka.
You got to know Russians. Every time Igor comes, we have to have vodka. He can drink you under the table. But that's it. And I don't drink alcohol, so I'm a lightweight. One sip and I'm drunk. But that said, they were Alex and them, and this other guy is a professor. His name's Dimitri. But anyway, and Igor's first name is Dimitri. But all said and done, they decided that it would be smart to give them vodka. And they did. Well, what happened? Daft didn't get his portion of the food and the vodka that they had left. The other ones took it. Therefore, he pitched a fit and terrorized them half the night until Alex got brave enough to go out and give him vodka.
Now, I recall a very, very early report of, I think it was Osman, the gentleman that was kidnapped.
It was who?
Kidnapped. He gave a Sasquatch Copenhagen chew, and it
that Albert Ostman.
Yeah.
When I first came on the scene, it's a long story, but only Mary Green believed my story and knew it for what it was. And I had never heard of Albert Ostman at that point. I was very new to the internet. I knew how to put a computer together, but I didn't even know how to turn the darn thing on. It took me 3 days to learn how to turn one on and get it going. That was when you used the landline to dial up and you get your server. All said and done. Igor and Dimitri interrogated me. He would ask the same question 50 different directions. And it's like, you're not going to change the fact. You're not going to change the truth. But he was the one that told me about Albert Ostman and his situation. And it was tobacco that he fed him coffee grounds and tobacco to get away from them. And the reason that conversation, we started talking about this, was because I was one of the only people at the time that said, hey, look, these guys they have to be people of some sort. I'm not saying that they're humans like we are, but they are, some sort of people, because they have language. They talk. They can even speak our language,
Mhm.
And all in all said, he says, well, do you know what these words mean? And he didn't tell me where the source was. And I said, oh, yeah, I know what that is in their language. And he was like absolutely amazed. Dimitri was, Bayanoff. And he says, okay, if you know this, let me tell you this, you know. And he says, now it makes sense. And they thought that Albert Ostman was lying back all those years ago.
Mhm. Well, when you're involved in Bigfootery, you're going to have, first of all, people have to know when they get involved in Bigfootery, there's con men, there's showmen, and everything in between.
Everything coming and going. They're all walks of life.
Mhm.
Some people are out to make names for themselves for whatever reason. You've got your pro kill, your no kill, these are humans, these are big apes, big dumb
Mhm.
apes.
Mhm.
But I only know what I know because I have experienced it,
Mhm.
you know, and I will stand firm, in my own thoughts about who and what they are, because until you walk alongside me, and I've taken a lot of people with me out in the field, and they're like, they've learned, they all come back saying, I learned more in an hour than I learned in years of doing my research and reading on the internet and taking and watching these TV programs on TV. And I'm like, you have to experience it.
Mhm.
You just absolutely have to experience it. And also, you need to be careful of what you wish for, because you might wish yourself back.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I could say this, that I've read the book that you and Mary Green authored,
Hmm.
and I learned so much from that book.
Thank
Really,
you.
really, Janice. I've told you this before,
Hmm.
and I don't take it lightly. As far as uh, somebody, claiming that you made this stuff up, you know what, Janice? I could give two hoots about what somebody says. Seriously.
Well,
I only believe in what I see
yeah.
and what I can rationalize, what logically is attuned to what I've experienced, what I've learned.
Hmm.
That's what I believe. I don't care what somebody says. I don't care
Hmm.
what's. Everybody can be a Caluso. You know what I'm talking about? A Caluso with Sherlock Holmes. Everybody wants to be a Sherlock Holmes these days. Everybody wants to be a Columbo, a Lieutenant Columbo. They want to solve a crime. They want to solve a mystery. But not
Hmm.
everybody is up to it. Not everybody has the skills to do that kind of stuff. It takes
Hmm.
a certain type of individual, it takes a certain type of thought process and
Hmm.
deduction uh, to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
Well,
everybody wants to hurry up and be a
mhm.
detective and call themselves a detective.
Well, yeah. Well, the one person that really influenced me, and he is now deceased, was Professor Roy Wagner of the University of Virginia. He was a cultural anthropologist. He studied with the Derby in New Zealand, New Guinea, and went to Indonesia, and a bit Europari down in South America, you know. And he told me, he says, you're already an anthropologist. And I said, no, I'm not. You know, he said, yeah, but you take this cultural anthropologist way when you are
Mhm,
studying with this Bigfoot. And he went
mhm,
out in the field with me many, many times and studied. I have an unpublished manuscript of his on his perspective of who they are and what they are. and there, what he learned, you know,
Mhm.
and I have the rights to publish it at any time that I want to. But, you know, what do you tell people? Okay, they're a type of people.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a mystery. It's a puzzle altogether,
Hmm.
and it really takes an individual to get in there and look and learn and
Hmm.
be informed.
Yeah. And I'm not saying I haven't been scared, because I've been scared. I have a healthy fear of them because they're a lot bigger than I am, and they
Mhm.
could take and knock my head off or rip it off in a matter of seconds if they actually wanted to, because they move extremely fast and they're extremely stealthy. That said, you know, do I let that fear stand in my way? Well, I'm afraid to go out in the woods because I have more fear for snake than I do anything else out there. You know, as far as if you go down the path and you're studying Bigfoot, you're going to run into other type cryptids. That said, um, I don't go out and try to interact with what we call the dog man, or I guess that's what people have dubbed them, dog men. They're a different type of biped because they can walk upright. I'm not so sure that they are human at all, but I don't interact with them. If I encounter one of them, I back the heck off, or I get the heck out of Dodge. I'm not going to go into their territory. Um, Recently, I ran across. I don't know what to call this thing. I honestly don't. It looked like a Bigfoot, and but it had antlers on top of its head.
A Wendigo.
It looked like a Bigfoot. It was hairy like a Bigfoot. Both I and Holly saw it. It was about a mile down from my house now. It had, I thought when I first saw it, I was paying attention because there was a fox and he was limping across the road. And there's a drop off on the one side of the road, and then a culvert that runs in under it on the other side. And I'm trying not to hit this fox, and he's limping, and he tries to go off to the left side, and then he comes back across in front of me, and I'm like, oh God, I don't want to hit this little fox, It's already wounded. But then I noticed what Holly was staring at, and she says, Mom, I don't know what that is. And I thought it was a big fat cedar tree that had the top of it cut out of it,
Mhm.
with a couple of branches sticking up. But it wasn't. It looked like a Bigfoot. I did not see the facial features myself, but Holly said that it looked very human in the face. But I can't verify that. But what I saw was shaggy. It was dark, and it had antlers growing out of the top of its head, like deer antlers, not horns, antlers. And I don't know what to call it. What do you call that?
Wendigo.
Well, that's what everybody said, to call it a Wendigo. And I'm like, well, my understanding of what a Wendigo is this skull-headed thing,
Right, right, right. Well, now you're right. Now there have been reports that I know of that Bigfoot wearing antlers,
Hmm.
skull caps.
Well, I thought about that, but it looked, because the way the hair was, it looked like they were actually growing out of the top of its head. And we both her and I said, we both picked up bad vibes, not evil vibes, but bad vibes, like, it was a predator, you know. And this was just a mile down from the house. Well, we had, unfortunately, she was working late shift at the hospital, and this was like 2 a.m. in the morning. And we were coming back. I was bringing her back, and it was like to the house. And when we got to the house, she says, "Oh my gosh, I hope the poor little fox doesn't show up on our doorstep or porch." because there was an incident in April where a deer, we had a tornado, and I don't know whether the deer came in on the tornado or it was scared, but it fell over dead on our front porch.
Wow.
Died of fright.
So we had to call the forestry and the NDR and everything else over this deer. So she says, I hope the fox doesn't show up. I said, I don't care if the fox shows up. Hurry and get in the house. I don't want that thing showing up.
There is a report out of I want to say Montana,
Mm-hmm.
borderlining Canada,
Mm-hmm.
of I think the first report was from an aircraft. Second report was from a hiker,
Mm-hmm.
and he described a large Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me a minute. A large Sasquatch, and I had to put some drops in the eyes. A large Sasquatch, and
Mm-hmm.
following that Sasquatch, he reported a large black salamander type being.
Oh.
That's a second report that I've found like that. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you like that, Janice.
Let's go.
Yeah, she's got storms down there, and I think I seen something on the comments that tornado or something down there,
Right.
Tennessee. I don't know. I hope
Well,
everybody is
everyone
okay.
want to know about livestock and pets and animals. There she is. So there she is. Okay.
I'm back. It dropped me.
Yeah,
So
that's
they were asking too about livestock, pets, and animals and stuff. Do they take them?
Do they what?
Did they take them? Pets and animals and livestock?
They have taken animals over the years, livestock. They killed one of my cats because it scratched me. They've killed a lot of mainly hounds, dogs that we had. I had one collie that I had was trying to rescue that actually bit me, and the next morning I went out and they had killed him. This collie. But then I had one dog that was also a collie. I've been into show dogs for years, but that said, his name was Shang, and he would run with him. Every time I wanted to take this dog to a darn dog show, I had to go hunting for this dog and hunting for them because he hung out with him. He was Squeaky's pal, when Squeaky was little.
Now I do recall a report. I can't tell you what state it was, but a report of a large black Sasquatch approaching a pack of wolves. They said large dogs like wolves,
Mm-hmm.
and the dogs, by watching the interaction, they said it appeared as though the Sasquatch knew the wolves, and the wolves reacted in kind to the approaching Sasquatch as though they were friends. And they said that
I would think that is possible, very possible.
the tails
because
were wagging, the heads were down,
Mhm.
just like you would
because
expect.
because years ago when Fox was still alive, they used what I call falconry. He had an eagle that was like his eyes. This eagle would report back to him. I don't know how they do it because I'm not into falconry. But I guess, it's like, well, I had a parrot once, but, that's a different story. But I don't know how many times I would go out and I'd almost step on this freaking eagle and this thing would come into my face. It was like it was watching me, and then it would go and report to them.
Grizz, I've heard the same thing. I've seen reports, not only eagles, but ravens.
Yeah,
Ravens are supposed to
ravens,
be very,
ravens.
very intelligent birds.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
2 weeks ago, we were at a undisclosed location. Me and William Henry. He's my research partner here. He lives close to me, but we went to an area that the people had reported that they thought they had Bigfoot on their property. And we got up there, and it was like all the ravens, or the crows, we call them crows here, were sounding off. And I said, uh-huh. And then here we find structures and all other types of evidence that, yes, the Bigfoot were present. But what they were doing, they were alerting those Bigfoot.
Well, ravens
Mhm.
supposedly work along with wolves too. They follow wolves. They know where the prey is.
Yeah.
Wolves will follow ravens. Ravens will follow wolves, and they eat their prey like that. And by the way, incidentally, say hello to William for me, will you?
Okay, I sure will.
So we've heard tale about Sasquatch, Bigfoot braiding horses' manes and tails and stuff. And I've seen reports of Sasquatch coming around farms when
Yeah,
when the
they've done
hogs
it
are
to
in
my
heat.
horses.
Uh-huh.
They
When the
do
hogs
braid.
are in heat.
Excuse me?
When the hogs are in heat, they'll come around, whatever season that is. I'm not a farmer.
That they did what with the farmer?
Bigfoots would come around the farms when the hogs are in heat.
Uh-huh.
They know the season, and they'll come around. I don't know if it's because of the afterbirth, or was there some reason that they come around.
When the farm animals were in season?
Yes. You call it in season. Up here we call it in heat.
I never paid attention. I honestly cannot answer that. I do know that, my grandfather had hogs, we had chickens, we had horses, we had cattle, you name it, we had it. We lived on a farm, a working farm. And we butchered our own meats. But I didn't really pay attention. I don't know if I know that they will take the different things. One time I had this POA, Pony of America, and she had a foal, and she didn't, we didn't do away with the afterbirth, and they came and got it. So who knows?
It's yummy.
The only case that I was actively on, and I got Linda Godfrey to follow up on this case, was in Idaho, and there was the initial report came from a lady that had a filly who was in season, and it was a dog man, not a Bigfoot, that was trying to rape this horse. And it had torn the horse up quite a bit. It eventually did actually kill the horse, but it was a dog man. It wasn't a Bigfoot. And like I said, I don't do dog man. That's the other side of the fence that I don't want to venture into.
There's a case out of Michigan where the police were called when the neighbors reported a fight between dogs and Bigfoot. The Bigfoot apparently threw 3 German Shepherds up on the roof of a house. And that's where they were when the police arrived, up on the roof of the house.
3 what?
German Shepherds.
Oh, German Shepherds. Yeah, it's very possible.
They're not very kind to dogs. I'm going to tell you, as a researcher, dogs take a unreasonable amount of beatings from Bigfoot Sasquatches, unfairly so, I think. And I say that because dogs are very, very loyal. They're family, and they're undeserving of being beaten like that and dismantled. Seriously. I just love my dog.
Well, a lot of people don't know this. I've been a professional handler, and I train dogs in different levels. have been for years. I always say that I'm not training your dog. I'm training you to train your dog because your dog responds to you. I can take your dog and have it working for me in 20 minutes flat, doing whatever I want it to. Getting you to be able to have your dog work that way for you is a totally different ball game. All said and done, as far as the Bigfoot go and their relations to dogs and stuff, they can be very aggressive with dogs. I had a German Shepherd back years ago that Nikki, Fox's daughter, Fox and Shiva's daughter, youngest daughter, took a disliking to. And Fox would even tell this dog, shut up, because this dog did not know how to shut its mouth. And he would even tell it, shut up, shut up, you stupid dog. And that said, I had the dog in a lot. The dog, every time they would come around, would try to jump the fence and get out and chase after them. This dog didn't have much sense, really. And so I decided that I would put this dog on one of the tie-out cables inside the lot and put a top on side of that kennel, so that the dog couldn't get out. Well, this dog is yapping its head off at Nikki, and she reached through, grabbed hold of that cable, and jerked it so hard that she embedded the collar in the dog's neck. Explain that to a vet when you have to take your dog to the vet. How did this happen? But after that, I did place the dog in another home because I just knew that they were going to kill this dog.
Well, there's a report where a family had a large, mean watchdog in their backyard. Watch the back door. They know they'd been pestered by Bigfoot and Sasquatches. One morning they woke up. They went to feed the dog in the morning, and what they found was the dog collar and leash tied on a branch, and the dog was gone. They took the dog.
Well, I do know that back, I want to say 2007, there was, we were interacting. Stan Courtney actually came down and went with me, and Tom Shirley at the time, I was with him, out into this research area that's up here in Middle Tennessee, Central Tennessee. And the Bigfoot up there were actually killing the local farmers' pets' dogs and eating them. Yes, we had a harsh winter, but it wasn't that bad. So I don't know why. That's the only time.
Looks like she lost signal again.
Yep.
I wonder what the weather is.
I don't know what to say, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just sitting here. I'm dumbfounded. So here she is. She's back on another channel. Stand by.
There
I'm
she
sorry,
is.
it dropped signal.
That's okay.
I said, anyway, we were out, and this young Bigfoot was actually, we called him eating a dog, a beagle. So,
Yeah. Like I say, there's hundreds of dogs reported over the years, hundreds of them, and I would say, besides deer, dogs, coyote, wolves, fox, any dog family animal is liable to end up on the plate of a Bigfoot Sasquatch. And that goes for cougar too. Did I leave that out? Cougar, bear, cougar bear, elk, moose. So let me ask you something, Janice. You're pretty well read, and I'm always amazed at some of the stuff that you're familiar with and you're aware of. Have you ever heard of the Miller document?
The what?
The Miller document.
I'm sorry, I can't understand what you're saying, hon.
The Miller document.
Some document. What document?
Miller,
Yes.
Miller, Miller.
Miller?
Yes.
I'm not familiar with that.
Mm-hmm. So that came out a couple years ago. Supposedly, it was from a government PhD doctor. He claims that he was assigned to study Sasquatches, and his first engagement with Sasquatches was down in Texas when an incident occurred in Texas where several people were killed in this town in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
He came involved in it because there were two soldiers in California that were from Texas that were overheard discussing that incident. So this Dr. Miller was sent down there to find out about it. For anybody that thinks the government doesn't listen to things Bigfoot, this guy is talking about the very early 1960s, sent down to Texas to find out about this incident that two soldiers were overheard discussing. From there, he started to write a paper about Sasquatches, and he called them. He didn't call them Sasquatches. He called them celebadides, something close to that. I would have to spell the word out in order for me to explain what it was that he had a name for. So his second encounter with a Sasquatch was when he was sent to Washington, the Pacific Northwest in Washington. There was a report that a hairy, unhuman-like beast was killed during a very violent windstorm, thunderstorm. The lightning knocked down a tree. It fell on the Sasquatch and killed it. The government was there to check it out. Dr. Miller, according to this paper, went there, studied it, and they shipped it off someplace. And so he goes on and on and on to write about Sasquatches and how the government should allot bigger areas dedicated to Sasquatch. I'm talking about more state and federal parks, more wildlife preservations. And so I read this document several times, but the last paragraph to this document, I'll never, ever forget. And what he says there, he describes the Sasquatch as very family oriented, very loyal to their family, very territorial, and furiously ardent backers of their way of life. And they need mass amounts of resources. And what he says in the closing paragraph of that document, and I'll paraphrase it, he says that human beings and Sasquatches will never coexist. Never.
Well, I'm going to put it this way. I don't know. I've never heard this account or anything, but think about it this way: you either learn to coexist or else you're going to be at war constantly. How many times have you been out in the woods camping, having a picnic, or along a even in one of these campgrounds, national forests, parks, or whatever, and walked by them, if all of them were so aggressive and so harmful or demonic, as uh, we've been dealing with a lot of these people that claim that they're demonic. If they're so demonic, how many times have you been so close to one that it could reach out and snatch you bald, and you're unaware of it?
Well, I would think that they don't, because there's other resources out there.
Yeah.
Now,
And as far as coexisting, you've got these yahoos that go out and they're beating on trees and they're screaming their lungs out and hooping and hollering and carrying
well,
on. It's
well,
all publicity,
they tell them that in Hollywood. They go out there and beat on trees and yell because that's
Yeah.
what they show them on television.
Yeah. I mean, that you're going to get, the viewer, more viewers if you act like an idiot out in the woods. I don't go out a lot of times at night. I do go out at night, but I don't like to be in the middle of a forest, or especially in the mountains, and fall off a cliff because I can't see where I'm going at the nighttime. But I always tell people, the minute you step outside into the woods, and I'm not talking about your own property, but it could be on your own property, depending on whether you're rural or in the middle of town. And there are suburban Bigfoot. But that
Definitely.
said, you are going into their homes. You don't want them coming into your home and snooping through your stuff and hooping and hollering and disrupting your evening or your day. So why would you think you should go out there and do the same, do that to them?
Mm-hmm. Now, there's somebody, I don't know, I've never found the source to this, but somebody claims that the numbers of deer, elk, moose are dropping. And again, I haven't seen the source of this, but he claims.
I'm sorry, it keeps dropping signal on me.
Mm-hmm. Somebody says the number of deer, elk, moose, and those are natural food sources for Bigfoot, Sasquatch. The numbers of wildlife are dropping. I haven't.
Well, as far as that goes, as far as resources for the Bigfoot, all right, they will eat anything from lichen to, mushrooms, nuts, berries, grub, stuff that we wouldn't even think about eating unless we're out and we have to actually survive. They can also eat things that are poisonous to us that I don't dare touch, but that said, I mean, they are very resourceful. I call them dumpster divers because even in Knoxville, for instance, there's an Aubrey's. It's across the road from this little teeny tiny patch of woods that comes down off the ridge, Sharp's Ridge, as the name of that ridge that runs through there, that little hill area, and they even had a structure pointing directly at Aubrey's, and we're going dumpster diving over there to get food out of the dumpsters, So they'll eat almost anything,
But they're carnivorous, meaning that they eat meat and vegetable.
They
plants.
eat meat, vegetables, some stuff that we would not even consider eating. But it's like they used to get into molasses. My grandfather would put out molasses in harsh winters for the cattle, and molasses licks, which is a raw molasses, and it's in flake form. And when you mix it with a little bit of water, it makes the syrup. They would get into that. The cattle never got hardly any of it. They would eat oats. They would eat corn. Dried corn. I'm not talking about corn that's fresh out of the garden. I'm talking about stuff that's been put up for ages to feed to the animals.
So I've got reports out of Michigan also. They've been cited eating corn. sitting on the side of the road eating corn and stuff, corn and cobs and stuff. So here is the paragraph that I was talking about from the Miller document. If you could, if you can hear this, I'll read it very quickly. He's speaking about the Sasquatches, this Dr. Miller. He says this: the species is amazing, powerful, and deadly if angered. Like any animal, it will protect itself, its food sources, and its young at all cost. It is imperative the federal government continue to designate natural areas. Otherwise, scarce food resource available to the Sasquatch will result in more opportunistic feeding behavior and closer interaction between humans and Sasquatch. These creatures and human beings simply do not coexist. Period. That was his closing paragraph.
Well, I think, I beg to differ with him. You can coexist. You just not to go, you need to know your boundaries and their boundaries, so to speak.
So when they're Janice, when they're pinched for food, where do they go for food? If there's falling wildlife numbers, and they can't eat berries forever, where do they go? They have to approach human beings for food.
They have to. I mean, they're going to have to. If we encroach upon their habitat, so to speak, just like a bear. Okay, we had a bear down here. Well, actually, I live in Bonor. I'm just going to say I live in Bonor, which is a town in Monroe County. It's right up the way from Madisonville, where I was raised on the farm. That said, one of the largest black bears on record was killed back in 2001 or 2021 right here in the middle of town. And it came down here because it couldn't find any food resources in the mountains.
So what I find interesting is the number of gunfire reports and aggressive Sasquatch reports. When you weigh the two, if you had the scales of justice, meaning scales on either side, the number of aggressive Sasquatch reports far outweigh the number of gunfire reports. And having looked at this by the hundreds of thousands,
far outweigh the number of aggressive Sasquatch far outweigh what?
Gunfire reports. People use gunfire as a way to react to Sasquatch. People do not want Sasquatches coming up on their porch. They don't want them in their bedroom windows. They don't want them in their backyards. They don't want them around their place of abode. And that's where the problem is. And looking at it from this perspective and reading this paragraph from Dr. Miller, I understand what he says there. I see it very clearly. I guess it's okay. It's okay to know that they're out there in the neighborhood and the back 40 behind your property. It's another thing when they come into your property, into your bedroom, into your front door. And somewhere along the line, people draw the line and say, that's enough. We're not having this here. Yeah. And that's where the problem is, as I see it.
Well, even I have to draw the line. It's like, I don't want them coming in my house. Not that I can keep them out of my house if they're determined, but, and I do live in this little rural town. I live actually in the middle of downtown, but it's still, it's a one-horse town. But that said, I don't want them coming into my house uninvited. They make, pardon my French, but they make a damn big mess if they come in, and they stink to boot. And, where they, when we lived down there on the farm, they would come in uninvited. But I think the reason being was because my grandfather started gifting them food. You know, he started giving them food, and once you start, you can't just up and stop. They don't get that. Hey, I don't have the money for this, or I can't run to the grocery store because we're in the middle of a freaking blizzard. You know, that lasts and put us out of electricity, and no store is open for 3 weeks, and get food for you guys. You know.
Mhm.
They don't understand that. So therefore, they're going to come in, they're going to try to help themselves, they're going to go into the barns or whatever. And that's another thing while I'm thinking of it. Speaking of barns, everybody reads the X sign as either a welcome or a not welcome, you know, the X markers that they make.
Mhm.
Okay. Those are actually welcome signs unless there is a tree branch or whatever, uh, another stick that comes down through the middle of that X. Then it's a do not enter
Mhm.
sign. But back years ago, we used to put on our barn doors and on our houses when we had little log cabins and little shelters, you know, the pioneers stuff. What did we do? We put an X on our doors because that was the way the doors were built. The wooden doors were built.
Mhm.
So they consider it a welcome sign.
Mhm.
And they use that as a welcome sign, you know.
Well, that's
But
interesting.
yeah,
That's it.
but you know, it's like they're going to be resourceful. It's like, you know, they cleared some property down the way here, and I think that's one reason I saw this thing that it might have been a Wendigo. I have no clue what it was. But anyway, me and my daughter. But they cleared this property down here. It was wooded all the way up almost into the middle of town. And I live next to beach, and there's a wood line on the opposite side of the shore of the lake. Um, that said, they cleared a lot of land to put in a new solar electrical plant. When they did so, the Bigfoot actually pushed some of the land dozers off into the creek, not once but twice, you know. And they stirred up a lot of the wildlife and the, you know, the Bigfoot that are in the area. And it's like we have turkeys that are walking through our front yard, you know, here in the middle of town. The deer, you know, they're coming up into the middle of town. So, because they've cleared all this land down here. So, this is a fine example. What happens when, you know, when we're cutting down their habitat
Mhm.
or, and destroying it? You're going to have, you know, they're going to maybe get aggressive or they get resourceful.
So what is the answer to that?
Excuse me?
What is the answer to that?
What's the answer to that? Hold on a minute. I got to just a second. I'm going to beat me a cat. You go outside. You
Well,
come in
don't
here.
do that.
You
Don't do
stay
that.
I'm going to whip you. Get out. Sorry, my cat ran in the door.
So if development isn't good for Sasquatch, what is the answer? So do we not develop? I mean, we're human beings and we live here.
Hmm.
Do we just pack up and move away for the Sasquatch, Bigfoot? Do we just move out of our house, let them
No,
have
no,
run
I'm
of
not saying.
the land?
I'm not saying to do that. You know,
Uh-huh.
I'm not saying to pack up and move away
Uh-huh.
because I don't live in fear. You
No.
know, but as far as fearing them, have a healthy fear of them and what they are capable of doing. Do
Mhm.
be aware of that. You know, they are capable of doing some things that can be very destructive or even harmful to you. You know, but I would not go out and shoot one just to be shooting it
No. No.
or shoot at it. Because first thing is, if you hit one of them, you've got to think, okay, you may be able to take one out, but what about the rest of them?
Mhm. Mhm.
and they're going to come at you with a vengeance,
Mhm.
you know. So the best way is just to, try to get along peacefully with them. Be aware that they are there, but don't start giving them gifts. Don't start letting them have access to your stuff, or food sources. Try to keep it locked up. I mean, they can break into the best building or whatever, but, don't encourage it.
Mhm.
you know they do, some of them do have fear of bright lights and stuff, especially like you put your motion detectors and stuff.
Mhm.
I don't know that they so much fear it as what they think they're going to be caught on camera.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, what is the fear of being caught on camera?
Some of the older generation, uh I think this, the best of my understanding is, I thought that if they had a picture of them taken, that it took their soul, because of back in the old days, we used to use the cameras, the powder cameras that made a boom like a gun did.
Yeah, yeah. So there's
Uh,
taboo.
the younger generation, they really don't care.
Mhm. So, if I can go back to the timber crosses a minute, the X's that you were speaking about, Janice.
Do what?
Let's go back to the timber crosses again, the X's. You were
The
talking
ex-
about the crossed
yes.
timbers. Let me read this real quick to you. This is a quote from 1976. This is from Northern Cheyenne elder Otis Frank. He
Okay.
had Native American. He had this to say: "The children must learn when hunting in the mountains to be careful not to step on their land." He's talking about Sasquatch Bigfoots.
Yes.
They mark it well with a timber cross, a stick directional mark finders that tell the wrong path. Our children must learn these signs. Now he's speaking about a timber cross, an X. He's
Timber
saying,
cross. Okay,
yes.
there's a difference between a cross and an X.
Okay, I don't know the difference. They
There
Yeah,
is
yeah, there is a difference.
hmm
there's a difference.
okay.
X
An X.
cross.
Yeah.
An X is an X, which
hmm
you see a lot of people, it's all over the internet, all over Facebook, of the X's. But a cross is actually in the shape of a cross,
hmm
you know. It'll be like a, like
Like a crucifix.
yeah, like a crucifix.
hmm
And but now if that X has that middle log down the middle of it, that is, you're not welcome
hmm
sign. But an actual cross is, you do not go into territory at all if it has a cross on
hmm
it anywhere. And they make those very well marked.
hmm Okay. So, have you heard of tongue clicking before?
Have I heard of what?
Tongue clicking.
The clicking of the tongue?
Yes.
Yeah, they do that.
And so, what is that
And they
for?
pop their jaws, they pop their teeth.
hmm
Um, they clack rocks together also, which
hmm
is sort of similar, but it's different. Um, when they're making vocalization, and I know a lot of people take this for to try to loop them in with being demonic. Their the male's voices have a type of metallic sound because they bring it up from down in their diaphragm. The sound,
hmm
it's not coming actually from directly from the mouth. It's coming from down in the diaphragm, and the sound that's been carried through the larynx up.
hmm
And it sounds sort of metallic. Even when they're mimicking owls, a lot of people think they're mimicking owls. They're actually saying who, but when they're hollering who, you know, or who are you,
hmm
um, it's got that little tiny metallic sound to it. And I don't know how to explain that to other people. You just have to know the difference.
Hmm. You know, there's a tribe in Africa that communicate like that. And clicking has been very, very important in American history. They
Hmm.
used it in World War II, and that's how they communicated at night in total darkness behind enemy lines was with these little clickers.
Hold on, I can't hear you. You're breaking up. Hold on, let me go back outside. I'm in and out the door so much it's pathetic. Okay, try that again.
Clickers were used in World War II to communicate between people in total darkness.
They did what in total darkness?
Clickers were used in World
They,
War II
yeah,
for soldiers to communicate in the total darkness.
yeah. We use clickers with our dogs for dog
Yeah.
training.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, that's what they're used for nowadays. But yeah,
So I wonder if Sasquatch uses clicking like the clickers in total darkness to communicate among
hmm, haven't really thought about that, but I guess they could.
hmm.
I haven't really thought about that because I mean, the ones I've been around, they use they'll. Okay, when I go into an area, it doesn't matter whether it's Fox extended family members, and I use that because he's got children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren, and he is now deceased, of course. But when I go into areas with them or with other Bigfoot that I interact with and whatnot around the areas, I take and I'll basically, I just feel them. I don't know how to explain that they're there, but I'll take and I'll ask who they are, in English, and I wait for a response. I don't, keep repeating myself, and generally we do get a response, you know, um, and they'll holler back at us, "Who are you?" You know, and we'll answer them with our names. And then they'll say, they'll ask, "Where are you?" A lot of times if they're off at a distance from where we're at. But I think I shouldn't say I think. I know their hearing is a lot better than ours.
Hmm.
Also, their eyesight is a lot better than ours. Um, you know, but
Is their daytime
they
sighting
they
better than ours, or is their nighttime better than ours?
they're not their nighttime eyesight is better than ours.
Hmm. Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
So,
and people think they can get them on camera by using these game cams and stuff.
mhm,
There is always a one in the group or the tribe or whatever that is going to be a watcher while the other ones are off doing their whatever they're doing,
mhm,
and this one will pay attention to our people coming in or other animals or whatever coming into their areas. So if we put up a camera trap or we try to trick them with a microphone or, you know, that's run back 300 yards to a recorder, they already know, you
mhm,
know.
mhm.
It's like
That's
there's, I could give you all kinds of examples. One time we were doing some research. I was off grid. Um, doing research for a project that I was involved in back in at the time, and we set up cameras that we thought that they couldn't reach. You know, even one of them was on a house on the top of the peak of the house, and it fed back to our computers, a live stream, constant live stream, and they got a darn ladder and climbed up and got the camera off the top of the house.
hmm.
So they're very aware of what we're doing.
Yolanda wants to know, do they show themselves to certain people or just certain people, or how
Do
does
they
that
what?
work? Do they show themselves just to anybody or just certain people?
I don't know. I always just thought, that if they took a liking to you, they would interact with you, and if they don't like you, they don't. They don't have anything to do with you. I have been into areas where I won't go back to some areas, but that said, where they were really aggressive and they didn't want to have anything to do with me, and I left.
When I was talking to you about my encounter, Janice,
Did what?
when I was talking to you about my encounter, I explained to you what I felt like when they were staring at me. And you mentioned they were reading me. And I asked you, what does that mean, reading me? Can you explain to the listeners what reading is?
I didn't understand the question. I explained to you something when you were talking to me. What?
You mentioned reading. A Sasquatch reads a person. Can you explain what reading is, what they do when they read somebody?
Hold on a minute. I'm trying to. It's raining and storming again here. You're echoing really bad. I can't
Okay.
understand. Okay, try it now.
You mentioned a Sasquatch reads a person. Can you explain what reading a person is? What they do
Reading
when
a
they read?
person?
Yes.
Is that what are you saying? How they read a person?
Yes.
Okay. What it feels like to me is they are sort of scanning you. It's like looking inside of you, and it's like you're looking at yourself through their eyes. Is what it feels like, and it's like the feeling to me is like being a laser beam going up and down your body, but it's on the inside. It's like your veins, the sensation in your veins. And they just scan you, they read you, they read your intent, they also read your body language. It's like they know whether you're out there to harm them or try to harm them, or whether you're just out there being peaceful and not even aware that they're there.
So when they were reading me, I wonder what they seen.
So, do what?
When they were reading me, I wonder what they seen in me.
What they saw in you?
Yes.
Well, I can't speak for them. I do know myself that, and I'm not doing this to be mean or anything, that you actually have a bit of a fear for them or of them, which is a healthy fear.
So I got a lot of activity going on in the studio. I got a lot of energy going off. I am totally scared of them. I am not going to lie. So yes.
But when you had an encounter, it frightened you.
What's that? I'm sorry?
When you have an encounter and it frightens you. It frightens you. It scares the hell out of you.
Did what?
I was telling Val that.
It was shocking because these things were supposed to be a myth according to the grocery fish wrap newspapers. It's supposed to be a myth. To see something in a tree that size, looking like that, was a total shock to my reality. This wasn't supposed to be real, but there it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're in a dilemma. You're caught in that moment of trying to make sense out of what you're seeing with
Right.
the rational mind.
And
Uh,
our minds are programmed to try to rationalize what we are actually seeing. We are a sight type being, and if we can't rationalize what we are seeing, then we turn to other resources, or our minds start playing tricks on us, and we have the major flight factor, like we're the prey.
well, we are.
Yeah.
Don't dance around the bush about it. We are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a stupid person. I know where danger exists, and that's danger. That is danger. People want to play. People want to play with them, and people want to chase them. You get what you get. You get what you give, and sooner or later, you get what you might not want, but it's there. You can be wise about it. You can be smart about it, or you can be on the social media writing about it.
Mm-hmm.
I, for one, am not going to be a victim of any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
and I know better.
The unfortunate thing about Sasquatch, Bigfoot, and people who encounter them is there is no help for you. You don't feel comfortable going to a psychiatrist or a therapist or anything and saying, hey, look, I have PTSD from seeing and encountering a Bigfoot, whether this Bigfoot was aggressive or non-aggressive. This is something that isn't supposed to really exist. And I saw one, because you feel like, okay, these people are going to think I'm nuts. So there is no help except to, people get on the internet and they'll Google Bigfoot, Sasquatch, wild man, whatever, and then they run into these groups. And I'm not saying that anybody is a bad group that, that is on the web, but they'll run into them, and some of them are saying, oh, well, oh, you had this, that, and other, and they're not really helpful to one another. To say, hey, look, this is what you experience. It's okay to be frightened. It's okay to have these emotions, run the gauntlet of them. It's okay that, that you don't want to interact with them. It's okay that you think that you need to harm one or kill one or whatever. It's okay to think all this stuff, because you're dealing with something that most people, unlike myself, and if I had it to do over again, I don't think I would want to be in this business. But they've never had encounters with them, and and being who we are, if we fear something, we have a tendency to want to kill it or do away with it, make it go away.
Yeah, that's the human reaction. Yes, that is totally correct. So yeah, a lot of people cannot understand what they seen or what they saw, and they have problems with it on a regular basis. They suffer from it, and there are non-believers out there, which is fine. Believe what you want, but like I always tell people, they do exist. So yeah.
And it's like, everybody says, oh, okay, they've got these little signs with the silhouette of Bigfoot or so whatever on it, it says, I believe. I don't believe, I know.
Believe to me is worship, and I don't worship them.
Do what?
Believe,
What about,
when someone says believe, I think worship, and I don't worship Bigfoot.
no, I don't
Sasquatch.
worship them either.
No,
I worship
I
God.
know,
and Jesus.
I know they exist, but I don't believe they exist. I know they do, and I
Yeah,
don't worship them things.
no.
That's just my feeling on it. That's just my
Well,
feeling.
ladies and gentlemen, it's that time of the day. Unbelievable. Janice, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you, and I want to apologize to everybody for having such trouble staying on the podcast. My phone has acted up. We've been in under lightning and thunderstorms here, and the signal has just been awful tonight.
No need to
No,
apologize.
no need. We're just thank you, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you,
All right,
guys.
take care, hon. All right, bye-bye.
Thank you, Janice.
Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, now I'm gonna have to go and woo. Okay, I gotta reevaluate. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the energy that's going on in my studio with the dolls. So okay, you got me stuttering, Val.
Well, what do you think, Grizz? Some of the things that Janice says, I see a lot of truth in what she says. I see a lot of confirmations in what she says. She's always been, and the entire time that I've known her, she's always been very upfront and frank with me. And if it weren't for the things that were out of our control, the weather, the in and outs with the sound and what have you. I've experienced a little of that myself, and I know that it's storming outside right now here.
Right.
But yeah, it was a very good conversation, and I've read her material, so I was very, very prepared for what she had to say, and of course I threw in some questions of my own, and I think overall she handled them very, very well. And I was just glad to see her there. I should also add that in my research, Tennessee as a state has had over 800 reports, 810 reports. And by the way, you should know in Kentucky, according to this same research, has had over 487 reports.
Wow.
That's a lot. And that's by people that report them. You know, it could be more. It could be double that number. It could be triple. Who knows?
Right? No. I mean, wow.
That's boggling. I mean, it's mind-boggling.
Yes, it is. And ladies and gentlemen, from coast to coast around the world, hope y'all have a good night.
Good night, folks.
Take care. We'll see you. Bye.